As both a wargaming enthusiast and a Warhammer 40K enthusiast, I'm a little bit surprised to say this, that I didn't know about this potential availability. Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader, this window of a limited release, a re-release, an injection back into the 40K community. It's interesting some of the things that Games Workshop does. There are some things that they do where they put all this effort into it and you're like, nobody has ever asked for this. There's absolutely zero interest. And then at other times for years and years and years, players saying, can you release this? Can you update this? Can you do this? And they're like, no. But then there's things where, like Rogue Trader, re-releasing this, that's really interesting. Because certainly I don't know if anyone's ever really asked for it. And there are 40K players out there that are into collectible editions or into the different aspects of the game. And you might have different editions that you like to pull off the shelf and look at. But the current edition, 10th of 40K, is what you'll play. I mean, I have this with Dungeons & Dragons. I still have all my 3.0, 3.5, 3.x books. And I look through them once in a while. But I don't really play that version. I do have 4th. And on record, I do like D&D 4th edition. I appreciate what they were trying to do, but that is a story for another time. Back to 40K with the release of Rogue Trader, I'm actually really psyched for this because that's where I started my 40K journey. And what's interesting about Rogue Trader, I think it fits more than ever now in 40K. And I would love to see a potential renaissance of it, plus the possibilities of how playing the game as it was intended and set up to play. So let's jump into with some possibilities. We talk about fixing 40K, fixing balance, or giving you the tools to counter the imbalance in 40K. The joke was always like, well, second edition 40K, which is really like streamlined Rogue Trader, does that. In many ways, it makes 40K playable in that, yes, the rules are a little bit more wonky and arcane, but there's counters to what you can do. Your forces, your army, they have a chance. There's a possibility. Now, what interests me about Rogue Trader, jumping back to that, is the fact that we have all of these miniatures now in 40K. We have all of these factions. Now, a lot of them are not going to be playable without some construction or some house rules. Necrons, if we're looking at the time lore, and I'm a Necron player, I love Crons, they're still asleep. They haven't been discovered. They're just there. Chaos is kind of alluded to, but we don't have Chaos Space Marines. How can we have Warhammer 40K, no Chaos Space Marines? Or one could take the perspective of, because the Imperium is a big place, these things do exist, they're out there, but Rogue Trader is offering a snapshot of that moment in 40K. And there's some, I really hope that they reproduce everything. There is some awesome artwork of like the known Space Marine chapters. Dark Angels are black power armor. Rainbow Warriors look fantastic. I mean, the really kind of classic 40K artwork with the Grimdark is in that. So just from that perspective, to flip through that, I'm just excited for that if I can secure a copy. But what interests me is playing Rogue Trader with updated models, all of the 40K models, all of the different kits, being able to pull those in and play them from that perspective. That's really, really cool. Because one of the things early on with Rogue Trader, you had, it was an Imperial Guard. You had the Imperial Army box set. You had the Beaky Space Marines. You had a Rhino. You had an Orc Dreadnought. You had the Orc Raider box set. You had a couple of box sets. But a lot of the miniatures you would have to pull in from other sources, or you'd have to proxy or just use count as. I mean, this was literally the genesis of 40K. Well, now all of the faction lists in Rogue Trader, you could easily fill out no problem and have multiple choices. What's also interesting is we're going back to kind of borrowing from old school Warhammer Fantasy. You have minor and major heroes. You have war gear. That's crazy. You can build commanders. You could build different chapter masters. You can build all of the named characters. And unlike, in my opinion, 40K modern, 40K now, maybe that's what we'll do, 40K modern versus Rogue Trader. 40K modern, I mean, they're just a stat block. I get it. The game is a big mass combat game, and you're trying to streamline everything. I want to play those heroes. I want to play those named characters. I want to play that chapter master, but they get blasted off the table, and you're like, did they really interact in the battle? Because they're just a stat block. You jump back to Rogue Trader. Well, now, minor hero, major hero, generate your stats. I mean, it's almost like a deck building type game. Generate war gear, generate points. I mean, there's a lot of really, really fun stuff. Plus, I'll get to fight with a conversion beamer again. Playing a Space Marine like heavy bolter, missile launchers, this type of stuff. Right? Put all that aside. I can have a Marine with a conversion beamer. And I had that miniature. There was an awesome beaky Marine carrying this conversion beamer and fighting with it. Of course, I made the classic mistake of trading that away years ago when I should have kept it. But I did come out ahead a little bit. Hand flamers are back. Everything is squats, true space dwarfs. I mean, there's a lot really in there. So that excites me on the one hand, where now you can take and utilize all of the modern GW miniatures and play that. What also really interests me is the intimacy of the game. It is a vastly different 40K experience. It's on a squad level. Now, okay, we've got 40K Skirmish. We've had different games over the years. Rogue Trader takes it on a different level in that it allows you to build in each individual character. And playing the game on that level with that type of nuance, it's a different 40K feel. You become very, very attached to your miniatures in that moment, as opposed to, oh, I just lost 30 Space Marines. Okay, no problem, right? It's a big, big difference. But what also really interests me, and I've done this with 40K Modern over the years, Rogue Trader has the option for a GM, a Game Master. And the Game Master is someone that sets up the battlefield ahead of time, presents the story, the narrative, like the battle for the farm, and as the two players play through it, they might reveal hidden effects. They might control terrain on the board. You literally might have some, let's call them monsters, right, hanging out in some piece of terrain. And one player, they're there ahead of the game, and the GM knows about it, right? Everything's set up. When another player walks by there or fights by there, these monsters pop out. And what was really interesting was a game that I played years ago. I was playing Imperial Army. My friend was playing Orcs, and we're fighting over this refinery. And there was a part of the refinery where there was this massive pit, right? It was like a crater. And you couldn't go down in the terrain. So we're fighting to there, and it was a key piece because it blocked a lot of the table. So I knew if we could secure that area, that would literally protect that part of the battlefield. If I could get a squad up there, just hold it. I had the heavy bolter with the Overwatch. Do you guys remember that awesome Imperial Army heavy bolter guy? He's like true gritting. True grit is back, right? He's got that true grit heavy bolter. I put him up there, perfect line of sight, Overwatch. You've got the sustained fire dice where you roll again and again and again and again. That type of excitement is back. In that moment, I've got great position. I've got great cover. The Orcs come up. We're fighting back and forth. And then the GM has this monster burst out from the pit because there was some lore. The battle for the lore ahead of time was Imperial mining colony goes silent, Orcs in the area, Orcs suspected. We arrive. What happened was they're mining. This giant monster miniature wakes up, destroys everything, smashes everything. Well, the Orcs arrive there. They were going to raid it anyway. They're like, okay, it's empty. Well, okay, we were hoping for a fight, but we'll loot what we can. Imperial Army gets dispatched. They're there. We think it's head-to-head. I'm blaming the Orcs. They're like, we just got here, but this was the real moment. So in that moment, what was interesting, this thing bursts out, and you can play however you want to play. You can control your faction as you want to control it. in that moment, we had to minimize losses. We were both going to be wiped out. So we have on the right side of the table in this refinery a battle going on, orcs versus Imperial Army. On the left side where there's this monster that popped out, we're both fighting the monster in that moment. Like I said we both agreed, like, hey, temporary truce here, just on this little area here. We got to deal with this monster because if we fight each other, it's going to wipe both of us out, and we can't take those losses because I got to kill you, you got to kill me. So let's temporarily fight this monster. Then once it's dead, as soon as it dies, we're going to settle it. We're going to go back. Rogue Trader has the possibility. Now you can go head to head with no GM, but it really has the possibility to play that way and to come up with these custom scenarios, these custom battles. That really intrigues me to explore 40K that way. I always enjoyed, and I still do from time to time, Dark Heresy, the Fantasy Flight version, pulling in those elements of the Grimdark, especially now with how developed 40K is. That's an interesting opportunity. So I'm really, really excited. If I can, I intend to pick up 2 copies. I want to put one on the shelf, and then the other one we're going to play. Hopefully it's not like my old Rogue Trader book, which was gone long ago. The pages broke, the binding broke, it's been taped together. I really don't know what happened to it. I mean, I looked for it years ago in the back with Dark Future and Space Fleet in my gaming closet. I think I traded it away or someone borrowed it, and that was that. But to have a new copy, to explore 40K from that perspective, your thoughts on it. And if it's released, now here's the part 2, and I'll leave it with this. GW's out for that cash grab. That's good because we get more stuff. If they release that and it sells well, what if they sold some of the old kits? We're going to jack up the price. We're not going to sell them one for one. We're going to jack it up. What if you could get the old Beaky Marines? What if you could get the True Grit Imperial Army Heavy Bolter? What if you could get the Conversion Beamer? What if you could get the Marine with the Power Glove and the Hand Flamer? Those perspectives, those ideas. What if I could get Eldar with las guns? Playing it from that perspective. What if they re-released some of these kits? That could also be really, really interesting. So I hope it does well. It's probably just a one-off in that moment. But it's interesting to see that out of all the things they could re-release, all the things they could update, this is what they choose to release. And I wonder if it's just a one-off, maybe because 40K is getting so old, they need to re-release it to keep the IP legally active and legally up. It's probably that. Maybe it's just a one-off print. Maybe it's leading to something else. Your thoughts, and out of curiosity, if you're a new 40K player, how would you feel about taking your current collection, taking those models, and exploring the Grimdark through Rogue Trader?